To introduce yourself to the class.
Okay.
Share a little bit about who you are and what is it that you get to do.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can. If you guys want, you can put little hands up or thumbs up on your chat accordingly. So can everybody hear okay?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my name's Carrie Meyer, and I have done a lot of different jobs in my life. This year, I'm doing a volunteer job with AmeriCorps, which is kind of but it's in America. It's in our country instead of like traveling to Africa and working in a little village to help the village get water or something, which, you know, your typical Peace Corps thing, or in Bolivia or something like that. I'm serving for a year here in the United States in my own community. And that's a program that I really just found out about. I'd always heard about it, never knew about it. But so I am doing this year. I'm about halfway through, and I'm stationed at Mustang Island State Park, which is the local state park here in Corpus Christi. We have 3 state parks in this general area, but it's the one that's on the beach. And so the focus is that type of environment, those type of resources that we have in the beach environment, beach, dunes, wetlands, things like that. So my job is to help the staff there connect better to the local community, because a lot of people that go to our state parks, you know, when you go to a state park, it might be up in the hill country. You're not even from there, you know, or you live here, say, and go to the hill country for a state park. A lot of our guests at the state park are from out of state or out of the city at least. And not a lot of our local people go out there, especially people who are what we call underserved, which means that you could not have the resources available to you out to the park. Like either you're a child, right, whose parents can't figure out how to get out there through transportation issues, through they can't pay the fee to get in, things like that. Or maybe you're disabled and you don't have, you know, you don't feel like that the park is something that is accommodating to you, or that you are homeless, you know, that you obviously, so transportation is kind of one of our big things. And then the price of admission, which is it's $5 right now. I think it's like $5 per person maybe, or $5 per car. I think it's $5 per person.
It's per car.
Per car? Okay, so I should know that.
Car. I think.
Per car. Yeah. But anyway, and right now with COVID, the park is only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you have to make reservations online. So all that stuff, because of COVID-19, has really changed my job. And before that, I was going to the organizations that service underserved people, like the women's shelter, and trying to arrange for them to come out, like homeschool groups, you know, who homeschool families you don't think of as being disadvantaged, but in a way you've got one parent working and one parent teaching usually. And so you only have a single income family, usually fairly low income because of that. Sometimes they'll have multiple kids. So that's kind of an underserved person because it's a low income person. And so anyway, that's kind of my job, is to find those people in the community who aren't already engaged with the park and try to get them engaged and try to make them aware of the resources that are available for them there. Because at the park, we have a ranger who's an interpreter. And that means that he is able to interpret the nature in a way that is interesting to people and make them connect with it. So that's his job, to connect people who come to the park with the resources. But if local people aren't coming to the park, he's not able to do that. So that's why you guys live here in Corpus, or at least temporarily, right, while you're going to school, are what we consider the local community. And the fact that I'm able to engage, I think that the people who were there on Tuesday, except for Leticia, had been there once, but not very aware of our state park. And so really I was doing what I was supposed to do. So anyway, just a little bit more about AmeriCorps is that it's kind of a neat thing to do, maybe have a transition in your life. Like when you finish college, or if you decide to take a year off of college because something, you apply for AmeriCorps and they pay you a little bit. They pay you it ends up being about $250 a week, and for a full-time job. So that's, you know, like working at McDonald's or something. I mean, it's not very much money, but it's doing usually something that you would find meaningful, and which I do. And so that's why I'm doing it, is kind of for the personal, meaningful thing. Instead of flipping burgers, you know, I'm actually working at a state park, which is a lot cooler for me than doing a part-time job or a, you know, minimum wage job. But the reason that I'm doing it is because like I said, I have done a lot of things in my life. I'm 59 now, and so I've done, I don't know how many jobs, tons of jobs. And I had a career, then I just started working in tourism, then I, you know, the world really, and lived in all these different places, just working whatever jobs I could find. And because I like to travel and I like nature and I like being outdoors, so I was kind of doing jobs that always had that theme to them. I worked in tourism a lot, and you have to kind of move around when you work in tourism because it's very seasonal. Usually one place is touristy during one season, and then like the mountains, you know, you work at a resort, it's going to close all summer. You work at a windsurfing resort, you know, it's going to close. So anyway, I also then ended up having a kid and ended up homeschooling him for 4 years. Then we put him back into public school for like the last part of middle school 2 years ago. So I'm now no longer a teacher, a homeschool teacher, so much. And I had this time on my hands. So I'm like, well, I want to re-enter the workforce, but how do I do that? What do I want to do? And so I found AmeriCorps, and it's kind of a gap year type thing to allow me to transition into maybe a job working at a state park, or a job, you know, teaching people about nature and teaching people about the environment. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I happen to find your instructor, your professor, through the Antonio E. Garcia Arts and Education Center, which is it's partners with TAMUCC, and the students from the university go over there. It's on the west side of Corpus Christi, and the neighborhood kids come to that place as an after-school center. And then the art students are actually able to help them with their homework, and then they help them do little art projects. And so it's an opportunity for the college students to interact with kids, and then the kids to have the advantage of interacting with these college students. And so anyway, because of that, and the kids are underserved kids. So I connected with the director there, and he put me in touch with your professor, which is how I found you guys. So it's all just who you know, and kind of working and networking. And that's a lot about how you get along in this life. And so this is a great example of that, and how to also, the fact that she's doing this online. I mean, that's just adapting to your environment and adapting to what happens. And this is what my plate is today. What am I going to make out of it, right? So, you know, I thought that I was going to bring large groups of people out to the park and have them go through educational programs that the ranger's doing. As it turns out, you know, I'm bringing small groups. I'm talking to people on Zoom. So we're all adapting to this. So one other quick thing about me that and then I'll be quiet.
No, you're fine. No, this is about you.
Okay, but it's kind of important, is that part of the work that I have done over the past, say, 20 years is, like I said, I was traveling around and working seasonal jobs a lot. I actually lived in Hawaii for 5 years, from the time I was like 35 to 40. And I was working in the dive industry and scuba diving, snorkeling, and also windsurfing a little bit. But when I was working in that dive industry, I actually started getting really interested in the wildlife that we were seeing and learning a lot about them. And I took some courses to become a marine naturalist, is what they called it, where you're on the boat, right? And you're a crew member, you're tying up the boat and swabbing the decks and all that stuff. But you're also, during the cruise, and I'm talking like 100 people on a boat, huge boats, you're the person with the microphone saying, this is what we're going to see when we get there, and here's some pictures of what you can expect to see, and here's how we treat the reef when we're snorkeling. We don't kick it, and we don't touch anything, and we make sure that these animals continue to live here, because if we through our presence or chasing them away, then we're, slitting our own throats because we're not going to have anything to show people. So we want to make sure that we're stewards of the reef, that we take care of the reef. And then I would also so that would be sort of the, environmental message that I would give them, as well as the information about the actual animals that people were really interested in. That's why they're there, right? They want to snorkel and see animals. And then also I did whale watch tours, which was, you stay on the boat, but you're looking out and seeing these humpback whales displaying behaviors, and you're trying to interpret the behavior to the layperson, scientific information to the layperson. So you're kind of dumbing it down for people and, trying to keep their attention. And so that's also, so I was an interpreter, is that word. So I've recently taken an interpretation course through National Association of Interpretation. So I'm a certified interpreter now, which is, just a little star in your crown that you can put on your resume. But it was a real interesting course. And I'm real interested in that field of study, actually, interpretation of natural resources to the public, to try to connect people better with the environment. So that's getting back to now about trash and marine debris. And kind of the topic that we're talking about is that when I was in Hawaii, I worked with this company. It's a nonprofit organization called Hawaii Wildlife Fund. And one of my best friends is the executive director. And they've been around for about 25 years. And when I first moved to Maui, they had been just going for maybe 4 years. And so I was working with them as an interpreter, as a marine naturalist on boats, but also helped with their website. And I still do actually help with their website and their messaging. They have a lot of really cool people working there. Well, not a lot. They have like 5 or 6 people who work there. And they're what they do is pick up a lot of trash off the beaches, and we call it marine debris. That's the technical term for marine trash. And their message is to how to stop the pollution at its source by our choices and by legislation and things like that to reduce the amount of plastics in our society, in our world, in our environment. So I'm really moved by that mission. It's meaningful to me. I embrace that in my own life, and I try to raise consciousness of other people about plastics in the ocean and in our environment. So doing what we did on Tuesday is just like what I do for fun. I mean, I just love going out and picking up trash, and like seeing what's out there and understanding not only the plastic that's coming out, but everything that comes up, and how our actions are negatively impacting the natural world, and how we as a society eventually are going to hopefully get to the point where we will be more at one with the environment. We will be at a place where we're not, destructive, but we're actually stewards. We're actually helping. So that's the goal of humanity, in my opinion, is that we got to figure out how to take care of our planet, because it's our home and it's our mother. So let's see. So Hawaii Wildlife Fund, a little bit more, is not just trash, but the reason they're doing that is because they're all about wildlife. That's why it's called Hawaii Wildlife Fund. So when trash gets in the ocean or gets anywhere, it is a danger to wildlife. Sometimes it messes up their habitat, the places that they live. The fishing line gets wrapped around the coral reef. The little fish who want to live on that reef, they're having to dart in and out of this fishing line. If it has a hook on it, they can get hooked. Mostly, though, the problem is with the animals ingesting the plastic and little pieces. And we talked a lot on Tuesday when we walked about, you see like a Clorox bottle on the beach. You're like, oh, marine debris, pick it up. But really, the most dangerous to animals are the really small pieces, because that's the thing that looks like a seed, or it looks like a berry, or it looks like a little thing, a little animal that they might want to eat. And so they mistake these small pieces of plastic for food, and then they're eating it. And then even if we don't care about animals, just say we didn't. Some animals, like fish, that people are actually eating. And so if you care about yourself and what you're eating, and then you're eating a fish that has plastic in it, and maybe you can't even see the plastic because the fish has digested it, but some of the toxins from the plastic are getting in the fish. So it does affect people, not just wildlife. So So anyway, that's kind of my background that I've been fascinated with and motivated by and passionate, I guess, about trying to help the oceans because I'm a windsurfer and a kiteboarder and a surfer. And so I do a lot of outdoor sports and boater. And I just love being on the water. And I'm a swimmer. I'm like a mermaid, right? I love being on the water. And even though I grew up in a landlocked flat town in North Texas where there was no water, when I got to be an adult, I was out of there and I just went to the ocean. And I've always lived by oceans. So that's about it. That's my story. And I hope that we can work together on this trash can project, which is just a minor part of what you're doing. But we have this area at the park where we have an outdoor classroom where we hope to engage people and make them more interested in what they're seeing there at the park and the nature. And so to draw them into that classroom, it's basically a shade structure with some decorations. One of the decorations and one of the tools will be a big trash can that has really cool, hopefully, painted scene on it that is going to be up to the artist, to Leticia actually, and it will serve as hopefully, like even when little kids see it, they'll be like, "Mommy, I want to throw something away into that trash can." You know, it'll be like this thing that draws people in that makes them want to put trash in it because it's so cool looking and pretty. And also, we don't have a trash can there right now, and so you have to throw your trash away. So it'll also serve the beach user and make it easier to throw your trash away or throw other trash that you find away. So, and then of course your marine debris project for your sculpture. I know some people who actually have done that, artists for a living, and or not for a living, but I mean they made money out of it, or they were successful as an artist, which isn't always the same, making money and successful as an artist. But they had real success with using marine debris in their art as sculpture. And so I'm going to try to get one of those artists to hopefully speak with y'all during your course.
Nice. Thank you for sharing so much about your experience, your background. Before I keep going, any initial thoughts or questions that you all may have for Carrie while she's here with us? You can either unmute yourself or you can type them in. And so as you're thinking about that, a follow-up question, because I know we've talked a little bit about the other organizations that you're a part of. So if the students, as they're working through this, want to continue, they might not have a connection to Hawaii, but are there any other organizations you'd encourage them to take a look at?
Like the local Surfrider Foundation. Perfect. It's called Coastal Bend Surfrider Foundation. They actually meet at A&M once a month, or they used to before COVID. And one of their programs, their biggest program really, is called Skip the Plastic. And it's been going on for, 8 years maybe. Their message on that is that we want to choose containers that are other than plastic. Anytime, especially single-use plastic items like a water bottle, single-use water bottle, a grocery bag, single-use grocery bags. They're trying to get people to evolve away from using those kind of things and making other choices that are better for the environment and that don't continue to use so much plastic. And finding ways to do that and enabling people in how to have that kind of lifestyle. That's kind of what, and then they're also working on legislation to actually try to make it mandatory that less plastic is in our environment. Nice. They're on Facebook, Skip the Plastic, and also they have a website. It's Coastal Bend Surfrider Foundation. I'm a member of them too, of that group.
Nice. And I've been in your chat, if everybody, I've been adding the website links, so you can go and check those out and copy and paste those if you would like to look into those or join. I encourage you to join those.
And they also are on Instagram and Facebook, so both of them.
Excellent.
And probably Twitter. I don't really do Twitter.
What was the last part?
I think they're on Twitter. I don't do Twitter that much, but I'm pretty sure they have Twitter presence, but mainly Instagram is really big, so I like that. The Hawaii Wildlife Fund does a lot on Instagram, and Surfrider Foundation. Surfrider Foundation is an international group, but each place where you live will have their own chapter.
Mhm.
So this is our local chapter of the International Surfrider Foundation. And it's surfers who are concerned about the environment. It started off because they were surfing in trash, and their surfing locations were getting blocked by development. And so they started working for access to the beach, because you can't surf if you can't get to the beach. And so, like in the 80s and stuff, when 70s, when they were starting to build a lot of condos, they were just not protecting people's access to the beach. They were privatizing beaches. And so they're working against that, and they're working for, keeping the beaches clean.
Mhm.
And the water they're surfing in.
Yeah. No, if that's what you do for a significant pastime, and for some people, like, that's their primary way that they experience the day. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the midst of trash while you're doing that, or B, not able to get to it. And so that makes sense that that's how it started.
And also, when you surf or do any water sport, frankly, you take on a different relationship with the ocean, because a lot of people, they watch Jaws or something, and they're really scared of the ocean. Yeah. It's the worst film ever. So what happens is then they don't trust the ocean. They don't have a relationship with it, and they're barred from it. They feel like they can't go out there. And once you start going into the ocean over and over and over again, you realize that what the dangers are, and probably getting stung by a jellyfish is kind of like the main thing that might happen to you, and that doesn't really hurt that bad. You get over it in a couple of hours. So they're really, or maybe you get stung by a, what do you call it, a stingray. But I've been in the ocean like a lot, and I've never gotten stung by a stingray, but I mean, that can happen. But like, as far as getting a shark bite, like, it's like just doesn't happen. I mean, it's just very, very, very seldom that ever happens. And so, but it keeps people from going in the water because they have this fear, right? But they'll get right in their car and drive down a highway 80 miles an hour with all these other cars around them that is so dangerous to do, and they don't even blink. They don't even think about it. So it's this perceived danger that keeps people out of the ocean. That's really not. When you look at the statistics, it's just not a reality. It's not real. They just think it is. So I hope that people can kind of do the studies and look at the actual incidences of people getting even bit by sharks or killed by sharks. Just never here in Texas. Bit by sharks, maybe once a year, one person all along the Texas coast, maybe. So, but people, thousands and thousands of people don't go in the water because of that. So it's just this false narrative.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to the plastic pickup, and again, if anybody has any other thoughts or questions along the way, please jump in on the chat or unmute yourself. Other than that, I will continue to ask questions because I have tons. Would you be so kind to talk about and share one of the things that when we met before and went for a walk on the beach in prep, and then on Tuesday, I'm always just so shocked. You were mentioning earlier the seeds versus the small pieces of plastic, and then those rope ones.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about almost like the camouflage, like how confusing it would be to be an animal in those situations, and how our work the other day, even though it was just one day for a couple of hours, how, like that can make a difference.
Right. Well, I guess for one thing, we try to humanize everything. We try to see reality through humans' eyes instead of animals have a real different reality in the way they view the world. And so they are not looking at something and going, yeah, that looks like a so-and-so. I think I'm going to eat it. They're relying on their DNA and on their instinct to their actions, or just come from sometimes without even thinking. And so they're not going to go, oh, that's a piece of rope, and that's that yellow thing that I always eat that looks like a piece of rope. Or, they don't go through that process. It's a much more direct thing. They just act, because of a more simple brain, I suppose. I'm not sure scientifically why, but it's just they don't have that reasoning power that we probably would if we were posed with that same. We think like, well, don't they know that's a plastic bottle and not, a jellyfish? No, they really don't. They just like, something looks like that, eat it. And so then it's too late and they've already eaten it. So like I said earlier, one of the biggest threats about having trash in the ocean or even on the beach or in the dunes is that the animals are going to mistake it for their actual primary food source. So the little birds that you see in the swash zone. The swash zone is when the wave comes in and goes out and comes in and out. That's where the water line. They call it the swash zone. So that area, you'll see flocks of little birds called plovers or sanderlings or sandpipers, different kind of little birds. They'll run in groups up and down eating little things that they're, trained through their DNA to eat, and that their ancestors have eaten forever, and that's just what they do because they're that kind of bird. So when a new substance is introduced into the ocean environment that they haven't evolved to recognize, that looks a lot like what they're supposed to eat, they actually eat it. And Leticia was talking about earlier we were talking about microplastics, which is very small pieces of plastic. Like a plastic shampoo bottle, and when it gets old in the sun, after a year or two, it crumbles and it just gets really brittle, and it just into a million little pieces, and that all becomes microplastic. Because that's like an older plastic, right? Another source of plastic is the youngest plastic that there is, and that is plastic before it's made into anything. It's the building block of plastic. It's a little ball. It's kind of like, when you have beanbag chairs and then you slit them open and you've got all those little foam balls inside. Those are probably more like styrofoam, but when I'm talking about these little balls, they look a lot like that, but they're hard plastic, and they have a name, and they're called nurdle. Nurdle, like the word turtle, but nurdle. And so those are being spilled at the plastics manufacturing plants that are along the Gulf Coast, and they're all over the world. But here we have one like in Point Comfort, which is up the coast, kind of towards Matagorda, I think, halfway up towards Houston. They make these things that are these nurdles, and then they ship them on boats, on trains, and trucks, whatever. They ship them to manufacturing facilities where they make shampoo bottles and where they make milk jugs, where they make water bottles, all those things. I think it's mainly plastics number 1 and 2, but they make all different kinds of nurdles. So anyway, nurdles float. A third of the nurdles that are made float. 2/3 of them sink. So there's a whole bunch of them. So when they accidentally spill them, when they're putting them into the train because it's windy, and they're just dumping them in, and the wind just blows up, a million of them off because they're so tiny. They're like, it's just a million, whatever, just keep doing it. So they haven't been very careful, and they have released accidentally a whole lot of these things. Then they wash down the rivers, and then they wash into the estuaries and into the bays and then into the ocean. And then, because a third of them float, then they come up on the beach. So your professor found, how many did you find? Like 2 or 3, right? Without even looking, she was like,
I thought they were little seeds, so I picked them up because you said to squeeze them.
Yeah, because the seeds that come off the sargassum seaweed are filled with air, and they're a food source, but they're also the reason the sargassum seaweed has those little things. Through evolution, they've evolved to, it's a beneficial thing that they have, is that it helps it float, and then the seaweed can float, and it's a living thing that's not attached to the bottom of the ocean. It's actually living on the surface, and then it floats in and it dies when it hits the shore. But it has those little balls on them, those little balls, and then the birds will come along and eat those. And so they look exactly like nurdles, except for nurdles are usually white to start with, and then as they age, they get sort of a yellowy and then a brown and even orange and brown. They kind of change colors. And I'm really not an expert on nurdles, but there is an expert on nurdles right here in town, and his name is Jace Tunnell, and his father was Dr. Wes Tunnell, who recently passed away, but he started the Heart Research Institute for Gulf of Mexico Studies. He was very instrumental in starting that whole institute. He was also, before that, instrumental in starting the Center for Coastal Studies, which is another thing at TAMUCC, where a lot of the people who are getting degrees in marine biology, getting degrees in like even I don't know how you say it. It's like laws about the ocean. There's actually, you can kind of learn the legislative stuff about, there's not just biology, there's all kinds of geology. there's all kinds of studies that involve the ocean, right? And they do that at HRI, and they do that at Center for Coastal Studies. Like they end up working, those kids who go through that program end up working maybe for Texas Parks and Wildlife, or for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or for the General Land Office. They get a lot of government jobs, and or they'll work for Nature Conservancy, and then they have these degrees that back them up that get them those jobs. And so Wes Tunnell was a great man. So I just wanted to give him a shout out there. His son, who is even just as cool, is Jace Tunnell, and he's actually works at UTMSI up in Port Aransas, University of Texas Marine Science Institute, and he's one of the higher ups there. He started this thing called Nurdle Patrol. So it's nurdlepatrol.org. Pretty sure it's their website, Nurdle, N-U-R-D-L-E, patrol.org. And it's a citizen science-based program, meaning that I, as a citizen, can participate in this scientific experiment where I do on my own. I can go for 10 minutes, look for nurdles, a specific way that they want you to do it. And then I can, on my phone, log in what I found, and it becomes part of a database that they're using to convince people in Austin and in Washington, D.C., that we need to make nurdles being released into the environment not acceptable. That these companies that are doing that, because they're so bad for wildlife, these companies that are doing that need to be held accountable, because they're not being held accountable. And so he's working on that, and you can be a part of that. And that's actually one of our volunteers at Mustang Island State Park, because we have a big volunteer program there that we'd love to have y'all be a part of if you're interested, especially after COVID, when we can actually do stuff. But one of our volunteers is leading these nurdle patrols that Jace goes around and educates people about how to do the citizen-based science nurdle patrol, and then she's doing it too. So it's kind of a trickle down where we're all learning how to do it. We're all teaching each other about how to do it. And the more and more and more nurdles that are found, the worse and worse and worse it makes these companies look who are being irresponsible. And there's one being built right now too. It's so sad, over like Corpus, near Portland and Gregory, north of Corpus. ExxonMobil is building a plastics manufacturing company. Guess what they're building? Nurdles. Right there on the bay. And so we're doing a lot of nurdle patrol studies right now in the Bay Area to set a baseline, so that we're like, there's no nurdles. There's no nurdles here right now. So that when that thing comes online and all of a sudden there's nurdles, we're going to be, it's going to be real obvious that they're coming from there. So
yeah. Wow. No, I think it's definitely something to get involved in, and I continue to put up, based on the things that you've been describing, in the chat, any of the websites. So like the Nurdle Patrol. So I think joining that would be great. Obviously, that's not making sculpture, but you could make sculpture that still includes this idea, or even utilizes, if you find nurdles as you're collecting, maybe that becomes part of your piece in some way. But the idea of this relationship between industry and the impact on nature, and how our work could be, if that's what you're inspired by, could be an opportunity to broaden that dialogue, to bring awareness in that direction. So no, that really helps a lot. One last thing, if you wouldn't mind me, Carrie, sort of leaning in on you on the AmeriCorps. And so going back to that first topic that you brought up, I've had friends and past students as well who've done AmeriCorps, where they worked, like, so they applied, and then they worked either at like a Boys and Girls Club, where they worked for a year. I've known some people who've done the Home Depot, Habitat for Humanity, where they built houses. And then now knowing you and working with the Mustang Island, what's the application like if somebody wanted to do it? Because I know you get paid for the year, and you get, how much is it, $6,000 of education credit for future schooling?
Yeah, so okay, so AmeriCorps is a federal program from the U.S. government. They give different organizations money. Well, they actually pay for a volunteer, quote unquote volunteer, a low paid worker, to come in and work with them, with these organizations. So like Mustang Island State Park isn't paying for me, but I'm working for them, because the feds are paying my salary, which is, like I said, $250 a week, which is not a lot of money, but it's better than no money. So so that's kind of how the money part works. But it's really, the reason that they don't pay you very much is because in my program, it is I am working with underserved people and they want me to understand poverty at a personal level. And when I first applied, I'm like, oh no, I'm really good at poverty. No, I got that.
already got that.
I'm really good at it. Yeah, I'm good at it. All my jobs I choose are just like poverty level jobs for some reason, because I usually do what I want to do and not like what pays well, right? Because I don't want to be a slave to the man, right? Because I want to be doing what I want to do, and because that's meaningful to me, right? And I'm being true to myself and poor at the same time. So I have had jobs that are better paying than others during my life, and this happens to be one of the not very well paying jobs. But if you're good with just getting some experience and doing something that makes you feel good, then this would be a thing to think about. And it's only a year-long commitment. And so after your year, you can these are the benefits after the year. One is you can either choose to get like $1,800 cash, or you choose $6,000 in educational credit at any university. So I don't know how many courses that's going to buy you these days. Probably not very much. But like
grad school here is 7,000 a year. And so,
okay.
Yeah,
So,
at A&M.
Mm-hmm.
So I pay for a year grad school.
And sometimes if you wanted to say, if you were going to grad school and maybe you were just going part-time, there's a chance that they would let you like do another year of AmeriCorps and go to grad school part-time. I'm not sure. You know what I mean? It might work into kind of like a TA job. You know how you go to you're getting your master's and then you're a TA, so you're getting paid, a teacher's assistant. They still call them TAs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how that would work, but I do know some people serve multiple years as a Vista. I'm a Vista, so it's AmeriCorps, and then they have different chapters in AmeriCorps. One of them is, I know my nephew got into trouble for selling pot, right, when he was, I don't know, 17. And so they sent him to AmeriCorps, and he did trail building and in a park somewhere. And so that was a great job. They were living in some cabins and building trail all day and getting paid, not very much. But so it was a job experience. He was learning. He was kind of paying his debt to society because he had made a mistake and gotten caught. And then he was actually, that helped for community service as well. And then he was getting paid and learned how to build trails and lived in the woods, and it was kind of a neat job. So they have a lot of cool places that you can go do AmeriCorps, and it's sort of a shoe-in job, and you only have to do it for a year. It's not like you're committing, 3 or 4 or 5 years of your life to like committing to something. So it's just like, hey, I'll do that for a year. Why not? In fact, they even have 3-month AmeriCorps gigs you could get. And okay, so afterwards you get that $6,000 or the cash stipend, which is I think $60.
That's in addition to your salary?
No, at the very end.
At the very end. So that's like the bonus. Like you make it through the whole
If you want the cash, you can get the cash. But it's not 6,000, it's like 1,600 or something. Or
the cash.
$1,000 towards furthering your education. And here's the big thing. If you did want to apply for a federal job, like any federal job that the federal government has, like for instance here, it would be Padre Island National Seashore is a federal agency. The U.S. Postal Service, federal agency. I don't know. The federal court in downtown. So those are all federal government agencies, the IRS. So if you wanted to apply for a federal job, they elevate you to the status of U.S. veteran, as if you fought in a war, right? Or you've been in the military. And then when you retire from the military, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you served in the military for however long, they make you serve 4 years or something, and you come out of it for about a year or something, or maybe forever, I don't know. If you're a veteran, you get the job before anyone else, and Obama did that. Michelle Obama was real into helping military families, and one thing she did was make sure that there's this stipulation when government agencies hire, the first person they have to look for in the application pool is a veteran, and you immediately get this huge elevated status in trying to apply for a job. But it has to be a federal job. So I don't know if you want to get a federal job or not, but so you get elevated to veteran status for any federal application, which is way good if you want a federal job. So I don't know, where I wanted to apply was Padre Island National Seashore. I seriously doubt they'll have any openings because that's a coveted job here in town. Everybody wants to work there, and it's a hard job to get. So I will probably try to apply after my year's over, and I seriously doubt that I would, get it. But I might, you never know. Or if
Sure.
things work out, you never know how jobs happen because it's all timing and who you know, and if you're in the right place at the right time, and
And you have the experience.
kind of jockeying for position. Yeah, yeah, and the experience that you have, and there's all kinds of things. It's just it's sort of crapshoot, right? So anyway, would be something I would love to do because they have the turtle program out there, the Kemp's Ridley sea turtles that nest there. And I have experience working with turtles in Hawaii. And so I also just love the National Seashore. I love going out there, and it's a long drive kind of from my house. It's probably like a 40-minute drive, which is kind of goes against my environmental thing. Like I always try to not have to commute. I try to live close to where I work, so I'm not burning fossil fuels. But I just have to get probably I have a Honda Fit, which gets really good gas mileage, like 34 miles to the gallon. So that's going to help me mentally go, okay, well, I'm driving a fuel efficient car, and maybe I'll carpool. So I could probably figure it out if they did offer me a job, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that to happen.
Well,
But
I hope you do. That'd be great.
AmeriCorps is just pretty cool, and I would recommend it if you don't know what else you want to do.
Sorry, no one ever calls me, and they call me now in my office. No one ever calls that number. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. Any thoughts, comments, or just thank yous to Carrie for her time today? I'll take silence as affirmation. If you do have any additional responses for Carrie, I'd be glad to share her email. Oh, thank you, Andrea. Be glad to share her email address with you all, because I think that you are a wealth of knowledge and experience and energy. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I am working on getting the team together to get some designs to you, so that way you guys can have a say in what ends up on the trash can. Because in public artwork, often like with my own work, for example, I'll get an offer, but I still have to work with a committee. And so I had to send them plans, and then they give me feedback, and they might mix and match. And so because they're the ones that are going to be living with it in the end. And so it's not just buying a finished work, we're building it together. So it's about that dialogue. And so I want to make sure that you all have a say and a favorite one, or you might be like, we like this tagline, but we want this image. And so if you would, anticipate that coming from us soon.
I did want to say one final thing in closing.
Sure.
I don't know how your parents feel about you studying art, or if you're getting any flack at all at home or just from society because it's not valued. It's not going to make you a lot of money probably, or whatever it may, who knows. But I think that art can be a catalyst, meaning something that creates the fire, that connects things that need to happen. Like, for instance, people using the beach with people taking care of the beach, right? There's a lot of people who use the beach and they kind of abuse it, and they don't have a relationship with it or take care of it. And we're trying to move people towards taking care of it. So educating them through your art to make them care and to make them realize something that they don't right now realize, that's powerful. And that's communication, and that's helping society. So it's a big thing that you can do. It's not just about, oh, I just want to express myself and that makes me feel happy. It's about, it can be that too, right?
You start there.
It's good. And that's great, because being happy is like the goal, I guess, for life for most people. But if you're able to influence others and their lifestyle or their beliefs to help something that you care about, it's hard to do that, and art is a way to do that. So I applaud you and congratulate you for being talented, because not everyone is, and it's something usually you're born with, and you can also kind of make it better. You can develop it, but I mean, if you're here, there's probably a chance that you kind of have a natural ability, and so value that and embrace that throughout your life.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, definitely a powerful note to finish on. And if you'd be interested, I'll send you some of the things that the students said about their cleanup, so you can see how they responded. And then if you have to put together any reports about your work this year with outreach, you can then pull from what we've done, because this has happened because of our connection. So I'm so grateful that Sebastian put us in contact.
And we want to see the sculptures.
Oh,
Okay?
they're coming. Yeah.
I mean, when they're done,
When they're done.
no rush. I want to be able to see pictures of them at least, and post them on our Facebook page.
Okay.
If that's okay with the artists.
I will make sure I'll check it with all of them and make sure that they give me permission. If they give me permission, I'll even just share their websites with you because they're building websites in this class too to document their work. And so I'll find out from them if I can share that.
I did have one quick idea that when we were talking about nurdles and you said you can't really do sculpture with nurdles. What if you put like a whole bunch of nurdles together and you got a magnifying glass and that came with your exhibit, right? A magnifying glass. That was part of the sculpture was a magnifying glass you'd have to pick up and real small.
Yeah, no, it would. My thought would be hard because right now what they're working on is adhering with a rivet gun, pieces of plastic together, and the nurdle is smaller than the rivet. So I'm like, I don't know how that would work. That's what I'm saying. I don't know, but you can build something that holds nurdles, and so maybe there's like a container that you sculpt that holds nurdles. So yeah, there's ways. There's ways.
And I'm gonna just type in a name here. I think
yes.
And she's a local artist that I want y'all to connect with.
And we actually will be. I emailed her, but just even if we don't get to work something out to be able to see her like electronically, her sculpture is being installed in the library on 1 week from today, on the 16th. They've added in, they had to get an engineer to approve a ring that's being added to the library permanently. So her piece will be up for 2 years. But I was working with him. I was like, please put this in because what's going to happen is there's going to be a new site for public sculpture that we can do after that comes down. Oceans of plastic. Yes.
That was her big exhibit that I helped with.
Oh, that one with the train?
Well, that was just another one. No, she had an exhibit of plastic trash that circled the world. It went to Europe and all these different countries. It went to South America, I think. It went just like it traveled all over the world, and it had a huge impact. I mean,
yeah, that's
wonderful. She's been hugely successful with it, and there's a lot of people doing that.
There are, and so we're going to be joining that team too, in some ways. Ours won't necessarily be traveling, but we are making in that same vein that Sheila has done. Well, thank you, Carrie, so much for your time today. And I will be continuing to be in touch and communicate and sharing images as we go. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. See you.
Aloha.